Americans have been abandoned in Afghanistan. They say the war is over officially now. After nearly 20 years, the war is over, they say, sure. Perhaps by U.S. militaristic standards, we have withdrawn our forces. But we left behind weapons, billions of dollars in weapons, and critical infrastructure. The war is not over. I mean, for us, it might be. But for the American citizens trapped behind enemy lines, it's not. For the Afghan allies, it's not. For Iran, it's not. And they sit just next to Afghanistan. Certainly when the infrastructure of Afghanistan begins to crumble because the Taliban won't be able to maintain it, Iran can come in and offer some assistance, perhaps in exchange for some of the advanced weaponry the U.S. has provided to them. Joe Biden made a promise that come August 31st, the deadline, if there were Americans still in the country, they would be evacuated. And that's not true. Of all people, Chris Cuomo did an interview with a woman who said that she is an American trapped in Afghanistan who followed the instructions from the State Department and wasn't able to get out. This is a tremendous failure on the part of the Biden administration, and there's really no words. But I can point out one of the things that keeps us trapped perpetually in this psychotic world, because people can't just accept reality. Let me look. I like Kyle Kalinske. I think he's a good dude. But here's the problem I have. I have this story from Newsweek that I want to go through. American woman trapped in Afghanistan, stunned after last U.S. plane leaves. Am I safe? She said she didn't know. She said she didn't know it was the last plane, that she had tried getting to the airport. And you know why she couldn't get in? Because of the Taliban. There were checkpoints, there was conflict, there was crisis. And if the U.S. had just kept Bagram Air Force Base, this would not be a problem. No, she's trapped there because Biden failed. Ending the war is good. But what they are doing right now must be called out. It's almost like Biden botched this on purpose as punishment. That's what some people have said. There's a lot of speculation going around. Perhaps the Biden administration botched it on purpose to warrant a reinvasion. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. I entertained the possibility before, but now I think, we're out. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Iran using U.S. weapons. We'll see what happens with American citizens. But some have suggested that perhaps it's just punishment. Oh, you want to end war? This is what you'll get. Americans left behind, service dogs left behind, $80 billion in military equipment handed over to enemies of the United States. We went into Afghanistan because of Osama bin Laden. And the Taliban was like, we're not going to hand him over without proof. And we won't give him to you. We'll give him to a third country. And Bush was like, nah, hand him over now. There's a lot of complicated philosophy and ethics in the idea that Bush could just be like, we don't need evidence. We know he's guilty, and then invade a foreign country. But I understand people were rightly pissed about 9/11. It's serious. But I don't think that ever justified going into war in this country, let alone, look, I get going after Osama bin Laden, but nation building. I'm going to show you what really made me mad this morning, and then we'll get into all this stuff. We have a tweet from Ben Shapiro. The Daily Wire. Last U.S. military rescue plane leaves Afghanistan. American citizens left behind. Ben Shapiro says vanity, stupidity, cruelty, cowardice, betrayal. That's it. I don't know if Ben is for or against the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I'm assuming he's in favor of withdrawing to a certain degree. A lot of the conservatives that I've heard have said things like we could maintain a small presence in drones, which is not a complete withdrawal, but at least it's a compromise, and then it stops the Taliban from taking over, which I can accept that compromise. We shouldn't have been in there in the first place, but getting almost everybody out and leaving some logistics, maybe some contractors, nope. You can't do that either. And to be fair, a lot of that is on Donald Trump. Donald Trump said we're getting out and we're going to leave all of this. We're going to end these things. Joe Biden didn't follow that timeline. He was too busy revoking Trump's executive order on critical race theory in the early days of his presidency. But I'm not going to pretend like it's just easy to say it's all Biden's fault. What's happening right now in the immediate is the abandoning of Bagram Air Force Base, the American citizens being left behind. I don't think there's anything to do with your hands being tied. And I think it's fair to say that this would have gotten bad to any degree, to a certain degree, even under Trump. And yes, this is partly Trump's plan. What I mean to say is it is good that we are getting out of Afghanistan. We would have likely seen conflict or crisis, but you cannot justify the Americans who are abandoned and the way in which they pulled the forces out. And so I see this tweet from Kyle Kalinske. I like Kyle. He's a good dude. He's a nice guy. I think he's a good faith guy. He responded to Ben's tweet saying, LOL, Ben has never been more outraged than when a war is ending. We don't need this right now. This is what annoys me. And then everyone's laughing and mocking Ben. What? We should all be angry that Americans are trapped. And you know what really, really annoys me is there are people who said, there's a lot of people responding. Here's one. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't American citizens in Afghanistan have like 8 months of lead time to get out? That justifies American citizens who are trying to save Afghan families being trapped and left behind. That justifies it completely. No, it doesn't. Now, look, it is a nuanced issue. And there's a good point to be made within that, but I don't think it's completely fair. There were warnings given months and months in advance. I mean, we had Trump planned this over a year ago, 14 months or so. We had to be withdrawn by May 1st. The people who were there knew they had to get out. But it was, I believe Matt Zeller was his name, who appeared on MSNBC and said that they had been warning the administration nonstop for years. Or I should say they've been warning, Biden as well as the previous administrations, that if they were going to get out of Afghanistan, they had to start planning these evacuations. Now, you can blame Trump for setting that, knocking down the first domino. Trump's not the president right now. So when it came to the actual evacuation and withdrawal, what did Biden do? I mean, come on. He lets the Taliban just sweep in violation of the treaty. They were not supposed to take provincial capitals. They were not supposed to storm into Kabul and start killing people. And as much as I don't want there to be a forever war, at a certain point you say, okay, this is bad, drone strike or something. Because I'll tell you this, war I get, okay? I'm not a fan. I don't think we should have been there in the first place. But I also think that we have an obligation to a treaty that we must uphold. And we can still withdraw so long as we are going to say we will not allow Taliban militants to storm these cities and overrun the Afghan security forces. Like the videos we saw where commandos were gunned down after surrendering because they ran out of ammo. It's horrifying stuff. But Biden screwed this up beyond all recognition. Mark Milley and many others screwed it all up. There's 87, I believe, retired flag generals or whatever, flag officers, generals and admirals who have demanded the resignation of Mark Milley. And they've said that if either you should have told them not to do this, like abandoning Bagram and things like that, or you should have resigned in protest when you knew they were. Either way, get out. And yet there are many people who just want to suckle the teat of the Democratic Party, even watching all of this happen. It's frustrating, isn't it? Let me tell you the story of the woman trapped in Afghanistan. And she gave an interview to Chris Cuomo, a person I do not like. And I will stress, before we read this, take into consideration CNN's allegiances. Is CNN the pro-Democrat news network? No. I know. I can immediately hear a bunch of people screaming, what? No, they're the pro-war, pro-establishment. And that takes many forms. And right now, Joe Biden could have, stayed in Afghanistan. I'm glad he didn't. I'll give him credit for actually withdrawing, even if it's botched. It's bad. And I will criticize him heavily for screwing everything up and abandoning Americans. But I think, it is the ultimate good in this circumstance that we are getting out of Afghanistan. And people have asked me, like, what about abandoning South Korea? And I'm like, you know what, man? They're good points. It is absolutely a good question about the Soviet Union, the expansion, Vietnam, how long we were in there for 19 years and 3 months, I think. That's crazy. I didn't realize that. And, we're still in Germany. We're still in South Korea. And it's difficult. It is. I can't pretend to have all the answers. But I don't see Afghanistan as being the same as countries being invaded by communists. I mean, the Taliban takes over. And then we decide we're going to go in because of Osama bin Laden and then what, colonize it? Yeah, I can't support that. When communism started sweeping through Southeast Asia and war breaks out between anti-communists, communists and anti-communists, freedom-loving people and despotic authoritarians who have killed 100+ million people, I'm like, that I understand. Like the communists were literally genociding people, the Holodomor, for instance. In Afghanistan, we wanted Osama bin Laden. We ended up getting him. in 2011. We decided to stay. Here's the story of an American citizen and what it really means that Biden has failed. Newsweek reports an American woman who remains trapped in Afghanistan has told of her fears after the last U.S. plane left the country. The woman, a former interpreter for the U.S. military, spoke to CNN's Chris Cuomo from Kabul on Monday night. Identified only as Sarah, not her real name, she told of her failed attempts to flee the country. Now that the last U.S. troops have withdrawn, she said she's lost hope she'll be able to leave. I just found out that they left, and I was just silent for a little while. And I just went, walked around the rooms, and I saw the young kids are sleeping, and they have no clue what happened this morning. That the last flight is gone, and we are left behind. It's heartbreaking to see that, with all that's going on, no one heard us, that we are in danger and we need to be safe. I just don't even know what to say to you. Whoever was trying to help me and support me, even they did not tell me that this is the last flight. So I still had hope that we would leave, if not all of them, at least some kids and some mothers who had disabled kids. I had hope for them. Sarah said she and the 37 Afghans staying in her home had tried to get to Kabul's airport in recent days. We were all in the streets going from gate to gate, she said. As a last attempt, she went with 6 of the children and a man who she said pretended to be her husband to get through Taliban checkpoints. Outside the airport, she said, I started shouting, I'm an American. Please open the gate. I'm here to go home. She said no one heard her and tear gas was deployed. I was knocked out for like maybe 15 minutes, she said. Now that right there, being knocked out for 15 minutes is no joke. That's like brain damage. So maybe I think her time is off. The U.S. State Department released a statement on Sunday signed by around 100 countries, along with NATO and the EU, saying they had received assurances from the Taliban that people with travel documents would still be able to leave Afghanistan after the evacuation ends. But Sarah told Cuomo that she has little faith that travel out of the country will be allowed. I don't believe in anybody anymore. I just can't believe no one told me this was the last flight. Her biggest fear is for her safety and the safety of the people in her home. Am I safe? Now the question is my life. Am I safe? Are these people safe? She said that her past work with the U.S. military will make the people in her home more of a target. I don't even think they're safe because they're in my house. I went to so many different missions with the military, so many different missions in different provinces. I never had that heartbeat like I have it today. This morning, when they told me the Americans left, they left us to whom? To those people who were always wanting to kill us. And now I am by myself here with 37 people. This is my fear, that if Americans could not help me when they were on the ground, how will they help me now when no one is here? The White House and State Department have been contacted for comment. And what have they been saying? Well, some people just don't want to leave. Yeah, no joke. The AP says there are also roughly 280 others who have said they are Americans, but have told the State Department that they plan to remain in the country or are still undecided. According to the latest totals, about 114,000 people have been evacuated since the Taliban takeover, including approximately 2,900 on military and coalition flights during the 24 hours ending 3 a.m. on Sunday. Members of Congress criticized the chaotic and violent evacuation. Of course, it was a lie. When the Biden administration came out and said, well, some people just want to stay there. Oh, yeah. And then I see it when Ben Shapiro tweets, when Kyle Kulinski tweets. Take a look at this one. Someone responds to Ben Shapiro. It's unclear how many Americans who didn't get out wanted to stay, and if true, why? Do we need to know? Should they have been hogtied? Also, I'm still asking the question why there still were any civilian Americans in Afghanistan when they had been advised to leave for months. Could it be that Matt Zeller was right in his explosive viral video yelling on MSNBC about the disgrace that we are witnessing? That he and his organization, veterans, had been demanding, begging the administration to get our allies out or they will be killed. It's tough. I'm not going to pretend all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to have all the key moral truths. There are concerns about the vetting process, but I can say with a 14-month lead time, the U.S. could have said, warning now to all, people who have worked with the U.S., now is the time to start preparing to leave because we will be leaving. But the question is how many people chose to stay, right? Well, I can at least say this. What about the story of Sarah, who went to the gates and yelled, I'm an American? In her story, she said that she was given a code word and told to hold an umbrella so they would see her and get her out of the crowd and get her evacuated because she's an American. And she said no one could hear her. It was too chaotic. So it's not about people wanting to stay. And yes, there are probably many Americans who wanted to stay. I absolutely can accept that. Why? They will not leave people behind. Unlike Joe Biden, isn't that right? You see, some of these Americans, like this woman, said that she's got a family she's taking care of, that she's protecting, and she needed to make sure that they were going to get evacuated because a good captain goes down with the ship. You make sure, it's the idea that there's a burning building and somebody says, I'm not going to leave this building until everyone is out. It's called being a hero, risking your life to make sure others will be saved. Now, there's some questions about refugees, and I see a lot of conservatives saying, we can't take in all these people. And I think it's fair to say we can't take in all of these people because there's like 1 million plus. But I do think it's fair to say that those who helped the U.S. and worked with them absolutely should be granted refugee status and should be evacuated. I don't think we clearly didn't get them all, but I do think they should be given refugee status. I'm sorry. I understand there's questions and concerns about immigration. We should vet all of these people. That's for sure, because we're getting some crazy stories. But the people who helped the United States, risked their lives doing so, should not be left to die. In fact, I think the same is true for any refugee. You're coming from Cuba, you're coming from Mexico, legitimate refugees. I say the U.S. bring them in. The problem with the southern border is that typically they're not refugees. That's the issue. It's like 90+% are just economic migrants claim to be refugees. And that actually displaces the real refugees who are like, I'm literally going to be killed. And those are the people I'm like, let's help them out. Now, of course, when it comes to remain in Mexico and the Mexico stuff, some of these people aren't coming from Mexico. They're coming from Guatemala and Honduras, where they clearly could have stayed in a different country. More to the point with Afghanistan is that we are evacuating. And there are people who helped us. And I can respect absolutely this woman who says, I will leave no one behind. And she tried and did everything right. So it's not an issue, for the most part, of people saying, I've chosen to be here. And more importantly, when Biden's administration and the AP says they're undecided or choosing to stay, you got to ask yourself, why are they choosing to stay? Is it because they have more within their hearts than the Biden administration, that they're saying, you cannot expect me to abandon this family who will be killed by the Taliban? I am going to, as an American, work to get these people out. So is it really that it's being framed like they're going, I kind of like being here. I think I'll stay. When in reality, it's more like, I will not leave unless my friends and family are protected. And then the U.S. being like, okay, come to the gate and we'll get you out, like the story of Sarah. And they were unable to do so because of the chaos, which brings it all the way back to the abandoning of Bagram, the botched withdrawal. Just botched is the wrong word, the catastrophic failure. And we are going to see some nasty stuff because it's not about the Taliban leadership. It's about, look, they are not a formalized group in the sense that, we would expect from any other government, like a military. There's a reason why the U.S. called them insurgents, I suppose. Now, they have leadership for sure. They've already struggled to control the lower ranks. People being beaten in the streets. And the Taliban says, no, they're not actually with us. Yeah, they are. You just don't have the control. And so things will get bad. It's difficult. I don't want to sit here and just pretend that, Biden is wrong and bad no matter what all the time. The withdrawal, I think, ultimately is the right move. It's not the same as the expansion of the Soviet Union in the Cold War. This is just a country next to Iran. And what do I think? I think they wanted a nation build. Made a lot of money for a lot of people. It was colonization, not some leftist, stupid, evil colonization. No, it was the U.S. being like, we're going to nation build, which is, and we're going to set up cities and governments, effectively colonizing. And I think they wanted a strategic location because they were surrounding Iran. And instead, they've left billions upon billions of dollars worth of advanced military equipment to the Taliban, who, in my opinion, will likely go to Iran and be like, okay, now we need help with our power plants. We need help with all of these things, organizing, setting up critical infrastructure. Hey, you're right there. Look at all this fancy stuff we got. How about you give us a hand, we give you a hand? How does that sound? And Iran's going to be like, you got it. Absolutely. I mean, we'll see. I don't know for sure, but I think it's likely. Iran doesn't like the U.S. Maybe they'll get a hold of a bunch of advanced military equipment, and then the U.S. will be like, oh, no, oh, geez, now we got to invade again. The war ending is a good thing. But for these, culture warriors, look, Kyle, man, I think you do good work. I genuinely mean that. Let's stop ragging on each other. All right. My criticism to you right now is that you are culture warring against Ben Shapiro because he's mad that Americans were left behind. How about we just say, yo, look at this. Here's one. Jay Burke, responded to Kyle saying, "Hey, Kyle, genuine question. Is it possible maybe to agree it's good we got out while also admitting the way it was done was a disaster? Can those two thoughts be held at the same time, or do we have to strictly carry water for Biden because war over? I'll hang up and listen." I agree. Let's not carry water for this crackpot Biden. Ending the war was good. I'll give him that. I'll give it to Trump. I won't give it to Obama or Bush, but I'll give Biden and Trump. They moved to end this stuff. You got it. Now I can say Biden screwed it all up, and it's really, really bad. It is. And now I can say there's no reason to be culture warring, rage baiting against Ben Shapiro at a time when the populist left and the populist right can be saying this was a screw up of ultimate proportions. But you know what? If the left just wants to keep carrying water for Biden in this regard, you'll lose 2022. You'll lose 2024. Because I tell you, there are regular people looking at this being like, why were Americans left behind? And it's on CNN of all networks. The story of Sarah and how she tried to get out but couldn't get through because they screwed the whole thing up. I'll tell you this. I think most people would agree. If the U.S. held Bagram, an Air Force base, instead of this, they could have told everybody, just come to Bagram. We got you. It's a strategic location. It's fortified. Ain't nobody getting in. And we can easily control this and evacuate people. Instead, they went, nah, we'll abandon it. Send everyone to Karzai. And then they couldn't get out. That's a screw up on Biden's part. So how about this? I don't want to rag on Kyle. I think Kyle does good work. Disagree with him on certain things. I think we mostly agree, to be honest. I think if you get the average populist leftist and populist right-wing person, and they'll all identify the same problems, just disagree on solutions. But I'm not here to rag on Kyle or Ben over being happy that, there's the. I'll say this too. Ben's tweet didn't explicitly say he was happy the war was over, right? He's talking about an article that says Americans were left behind. I think we should all agree that's a bad thing, because that will be the excuse used by the elites to justify more war. It was a disaster. Biden is awful. We knew Biden was awful. And there were people who just wanted Biden. And you know what? This is the challenge we face as human beings. We don't have a point of reference. We don't have an alternate timeline to look at where Trump is president to see how things would have gone. I personally believe they would have been better, because I think the moment the Taliban started storming to, rushing these provincial capitals and getting into gunfights with the commandos, Trump would have been like, drone them. I don't understand why Biden let them overrun the cities, or why he snuck out of Bagram in the middle of the night, abandoning all of our military equipment. That is just abject failure. Unless that's what they wanted to happen. It's no surprise I'm ragging on Biden, okay? It's no surprise that I'm defending Trump. But I don't know if Trump would have been good. I think there still would have been problems. I think that it's unfair to say that literally everything is the fault of Biden, but I think we can look at the key errors and say Biden screwed this one up. I think we can look at the people Trump should have fired who did, and he didn't fire them, and Trump deserves some responsibility for what happened. But ending the war was a good thing. So all of the chaos that we're seeing around it, so long as we don't allow them to manipulate us using disasters, but we're going to see some bad stuff with these Americans trapped. So it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. I don't want to carry water for Trump for the sake of him being opposed to the establishment. I'm sick of the media lying about everything having to do with Trump and blaming him for what's Biden's presidency. And I don't want to carry water for Biden just for ending the war. And I don't want to be blindly criticizing Biden simply for by virtue of being a Democrat. But there are viral videos right now. Maybe we'll talk about this one in the next segment, of Joe Biden just checking his watch every time. Checking his watch. Look, the story about him checking his watch is nasty. It's at the funeral, the service for the fallen service members. But I'm trying not to play into that culture war stupidity of just like, Biden fell asleep. You see that video? Biden fell asleep. No, he didn't. Biden did not fall asleep talking to, having discussion on Israel. He's talking. He folds his hands. He puts his head down. His eyes appear to stay open. He's just squinty. And his hands are moving. And then he directly responds to everything that was said to him. I don't want to play these stupid culture war games. I don't want to, Ben Shapiro's mad. Whatever. Ben Shapiro's mad because Americans are left behind. How can you disagree with that? Okay, I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.